Right, hello guys, and welcome back. Today, I have a new Arc Warlock build for you, and the title is not a lie. This build is actually so much fun, and it is insanely strong, and on top of that, it revolves around the Stormtrance super. Now, previously, if you told me that in any of our older seasons, then I'd be looking at you in a funny way, because Stormtrance dealing, really good damage in the Big 25, who would have known? But it's all because of some changes that were made to both Stormtrance and Stormdancer's Brace. Now, what I want you to do is when you're looking at the gameplay you're seeing before you right now, take a look at how quickly I am charging my super in between engagements. Literally, it takes sometimes less than 20 seconds to go from having no super all the way back up to full, and then the super itself is dealing a metric crapload of damage, even to high health targets, which, for Stormtrance is totally unprecedented, and that is going to be the centerpiece of today's build. We are going to try and build around Stormtrance and Stormdancer's Brace as much as possible in order to be able to spam our super as often as possible and make it deal as much damage as it possibly can. This build is going to work in solo content, even in endgame content, because you have the buddy aspects going on. Plus, it is also excellent for the new Lawless Frontier activity because of the amount of ads that are present and all of the objectives and bosses and everything. It's perfect. Genuinely, it is really, really good. And this was probably the build that I was most excited to make. So without further ado, let's get into it. So if you enjoyed today's build, then a like and subscribe is very much appreciated. But without further ado, let's begin. So as I mentioned, this build revolves around Stormdancer's Brace, and also this doesn't look like Stormdancer's Brace, but just don't be fooled, I've just made it look like a different ornament. Shout out to that system. It has the main perk Ascending Amplitude. It makes it so Stormtrance hits and final blows increase the damage it deals, refund super energy when it ends, and it also has a new perk now, Ability Damage while Amplified grants Bolt Charge. Didn't used to have that, and this applies to any ability, including our Arc Souls, because they count as Arc ability damage now, or Grenade ability damage. And also, it has been changed in Renegades, where basically what it used to do is Stormtrance kills used to give you stacks of Ascending Amplitude, but now hits work as well. And if you've seen our previous super testing video that I posted on Tuesday, then you'll know that Stormtrance does a lot of damage. In fact, it was around 44,000 versus Carl, which was the highest out of all of the ones we tested. I'm pretty sure it's the highest. So yeah, this is automatically a very good super now for Stormtrance damage because it doesn't require kills anymore. And obviously it still works with kills, so if you're getting hits and kills, you are just generating stacks of Ascending Amplitude much faster. It stacks all the way to times 30, and at times 30, it is a 200% increase to your damage, aka 3 times base, which is really, really solid. And of course, like I said, we now have the Ability Damage while Amplified grants Bolt Charge extra feature on top. That is going to be the centerpiece. We are using Stormdancer's Brace to get our refund. And by the way, when the super ends, it gives you around 30% of your super back. Used to be 50 back in the day, but now it's 30. So a decent chunk if you get enough kills, which is really nice. Helps with looping the super over and over. And then taking a look at our subclass to kind of flesh out how this works more. Of course, we are on Stormtrance. Healing Rift here. Ball Lightning is the melee that I've gone for, but you can go for Chain Lightning if you want. This makes Jolt, whereas Ball Lightning doesn't, but it's, whatever, a personal preference. I've also gone for the Pulse Grenade, probably the best grenade you can be using here. Then for our aspects, we are not actually using Electrostatic Mind. The reason for that is because Electrostatic Mind, in specifically this build, which is, to be honest, more about Bolt Charge, it's not actually that necessary. Because, Electrostatic Mind makes it so defeating targets with arc abilities makes an Ionic Trace, or defeating jolted targets, and it makes you amplified when you collect it. This was what I would go for if I was playing an episode Heresy, for example. But now, it's actually less required. It is nice to have, don't get me wrong, but it is not so required with this type of build, which is all about super spam, all about Bolt Charge. So because of that, we are going with Ionic Sentry and Arc Soul instead. Now, Ionic Sentry and Arc Soul, both of them are buddy aspects, and if you knew from Ashen Iron, they have changed it so buddy aspects now count as grenades for stats and perks. So they're going to get their damage increased by the grenade stat. They are going to make Orbs of Power if you have a firepower mod on your gloves, for example. So that is also nice to consider. Ionic Sentry, you're going to charge it up by getting kills with arc weapons or arc abilities. Arc abilities give 2 points. Arc weapon or kinetic weapon kills give 1 point. Kinetic, as in lightsaber, counts with a lightsaber. And when you deploy the Sentry, it is going to create a blinding AoE, and then it is going to chain between all of the enemies, giving you Bolt Charge in the process. And if you have our first fragment, which is Spark of Shock, this is also going to allow Ionic Sentry and your Arc Souls to apply Jolt, which is insane. This is basically the strongest part of the buddy rework. Forget the damage. Yes, it is nice that they deal more damage with the grenade stat, but having Spark of Shock allow both of your buddies to apply Jolt is absolutely insane. Wonderful change. And yeah, just quickly back to the aspects. We do have the Arc Soul here, which is going to be attached to our Rift. Our uptime won't be as fantastic as something like a Getaway Artist Warlock. However, we will still have it plenty of the time, because remember, if you are standing in your Rift and you generate an Arc Soul, Rift while moving, by the way, if you stay in the Rift, your Arc Soul doesn't decay. So if I leave the rift, my arc soul does start decaying, but if I instantly enter back in, it'll tick back up. So as long as you are standing in a rift, you can actually keep the arc soul for a lot longer than the normal, so the uptime isn't too much of an issue. Furthermore, if you use your rift, it says here in the middle, allies can pass through your rift to get an arc soul, and your rift charges faster when allies are near. So not only are you giving yourself an arc soul, if you're playing in group content like the Lawless Frontier, you can give your teammates arc souls as well, and if you place your rift near them, it will regen faster. Back to the fragments, your first one is obviously Spark of Shock, because you want to be able to jolt targets with both of your buddies, and they are going to be up very often, so very nice to have. Spark of Resistance here, because as we know, on arc classes, your survivability is not the greatest, so having something to improve, give you damage resistance, which for Spark of Resistance is 25%, I believe, when you are near 3 or more enemies, is pretty nice. It also gives you plus 10 melee stat. After that, we have Spark of Magnitude. This will make it so your lingering arc grenades, aka our pulse grenade, will last longer. I believe it pulses 2 more times, which is quite nice. And then finally, we have Spark of Frequency. Very important for any build that is focused around bolt charge, because it will make it so while you are amplified, you gain increased stacks of bolt charge from all sources. So for example, if I was to gain 1 stack of bolt charge from one source, when I'm amplified and I have Spark of Frequency equipped, I'll get 2. So it essentially doubles or just gives you more bolt charge for every source. So that works with Ionic Sentry, that works with Arc Soul, that works with the new trait on Stormdancer's Brace, where whenever you're dealing ability damage, it just gives you more and more, which is really nice. So essentially, the way to think about this build is normally with bolt charge, you get it through some ability, and then you build it up with your weapon fire, and then you discharge it with another ability. You can essentially forget about that with this build and just rely on the abilities only. What this chess piece is doing is making it so your abilities generate the bolt charge, whereas normally it would just be your weapons. Now it allows your abilities to do so as well. So they just kind of loop themselves, they take care of it. It is sort of, stand back and let the action happen, hands off the keyboard sort of thing, which is really nice. So yeah, that is going to be it for the subclass now. And I do want to talk about our stats before we move on to talking about the lightsaber, the weapons, etc. Because the stats are also very important to making this build most effective. Most importantly, 200 super, my friends. You are going to want to be running with 200 super. I have 160 here, and then on my helmet, I have 2 super fonts, which is going to allow me to get up to 200 total whenever I have armor charge. Getting armor charge with this build is going to be incredibly easy. You're never ever going to run out, which is really nice. The reason we have 200 super is number 1, because when we are there, it gives us 45% increased damage to our super. And number 2, if you saw the super testing video, then you'll know that Stormtrance does a lot of damage. So that's why we want to maximize it, especially when you combine the 200% from Ascending Amplitude, stack it with this. It's just really good to have. Makes your ad clear feel so much more fluid, and you'll be shocked, honestly, if you've used Stormtrance in the past, in maybe 5 years ago or whatever, and you come back to the game now and you use 200 super with Storm Dancers, it feels like a completely different super. I promise you, it deals so much damage and it feels amazing. After that, I'm also going crazy on the grenade stat, because we are going to want to improve the damage of our Arc Soul and Ionic Sentry. So I have base of 130 here. This is what my armor allows me. I would probably go higher if I wanted. Don't care about melee stat at all. And then I have a grenade font on my gloves. And actually, I'm just going to change this here for a grenade font. So we have 2 grenade fonts on our gloves, and then 1 firepower to make orbs with the kills, and then that is going to amount to another plus 40 points of grenade stat. So that effectively puts us at 170 grenade and then 200 super. So we're going to be dealing around 40%-ish increased damage with our buddies because of our grenade stat investment, which applies to both the Arc Soul and Ionic Sentry, which is really nice. And then after that, the rest of your stats do not matter one bit, except class. I suppose you probably want to get a little decent amount of class. I have 49 here. Would probably ideally want it to be a little bit higher than 49, because that governs how quickly you can get your Arc Soul back, but usually it's fine. Ionic Sentry is honestly doing more of the heavy lifting. So yeah, I guess I would say if you wanted to definitely improve your class a bit more, if you could, higher than 49, probably base 70. But again, I helped myself out here with having a class font on my class item, which will then put me up to 69 class, which is good enough in my mind. Just quickly here, if you wanted to pause and take a look at the armor sets that I have that let me get these stats, my helmet is a Grenadier with a tertiary stat in class. My gauntlets are Grenadier with a tertiary stat in health, which honestly could be better, could be class. My Stormdancer's Brace is a Paragon with a class tertiary. My boots are Grenadier with a tertiary stat in melee, and then my class item is Grenadier with a tertiary stat in weapon. So you can definitely get far more optimal stats than I have. I could have a class tertiary here on this Grenadier. I could have a class tertiary on this Grenadier here as well. That would put me at around 90 class, which would be even better. So if you grind out the armor, you'll be much better off. So as far as your weapons are concerned, we are using the Praxic Blade, the lightsaber. And the reason being is just, it's a really solid weapon to pair with, honestly, any build. It just works so well. It is effectively an infinite ammo weapon if you use it correctly. You will basically never run out of ammo with it. And it pairs really nicely because if you're in a pinch, especially on a class like like Arc, you can block to get rid of any incoming fire and save yourself, especially if you have the Hyperblade catalyst, because Hyperblade will make it so reflecting shots causes you to become amplified and also gives you the eager edge lunge, which is quite nice. So Hyperblade catalyst, definitely take that. The rest of the mods don't matter too much except the core. Now for the core, I am taking the impact core, which as of the recording of this video is currently earnable in Thassa's Cantina, but when you see this, it may not be. However, the impact core will make it so your melee damage from the weapon applies an elemental effect that matches your equipped super, which for Arc is going to be bolt charge. And surprise, surprise, when you are amplified, this is going to apply even more bolt charge than it usually does. So we're just going to be getting so many more like explosions going on. Everything with bolt charge just stacks up and up and up. So I think the Praxi Blade fits really nicely with this build. Crystal choice, up to you. You could match it to go blue, but I can't let go of the red. I think the red is nice. For your secondary weapon, again, doesn't really matter. In the gameplay you're seeing, I barely ever use it. I'm basically just using the sword and my super over and over, but I have gone for the uncivil discourse. My god roll would be air trigger frenzy or air trigger precision instrument if you can get it. Very solid weapon. Never feels like it runs out of ammo either. These blasters and lightsaber combos, they feel honestly fantastic. Renegade's weapons, so good so far. But that's about it for the weapons. Now for the artifact, there actually isn't too much important stuff. It's more just kind of side bonuses that help you out. Starting in the second column, we have Elemental Siphon. This one is going to make it so rapid final blows with a kinetic weapon or a weapon matching your equipped super will create an elemental pickup that matches your equipped super, which for us, if we get double kills with the lightsaber, which is kinetic, it will make ionic traces, which will help to get our class ability back faster, our arc souls back faster. Then in column 3, doesn't really matter, take kinetic synthesis because it's just pretty good. Then actually, the mod that is very important is Dielectric in column 4. This will make it so defeating arc debuff targets grants bolt charge. It's actually a returning mod from Heresy, and it also has a secondary component now where rapidly defeating arc debuff targets spawns an orb of power and heals a small portion of health. So this is just going to be another way of getting our health back on a relatively squishy class, and even more bolt charge because every single target that we kill is going to be arc debuffed. Everything is going to be jolted because of our buddies and Spark of Shock. So this is a no-brainer mod. You must have this for this build. It really, really helps out. I've also gone for Combination Argent Blade to increase the damage of my lightsaber, and I've actually not gone for Sword Storm combo because I really don't like the sound of this. Leave a comment down below if you don't like the sound of this artifact perk. If you've used it with the lightsaber, it kind of creates that, you know, zone around you, the slashes, and it does help with the dealing a bit of extra damage with the sword, but I just hate the sound of it. It's like the sword slash like over and over and over, and it's kind of jarring. So it is a damage increase, but I'm choosing not to use it because I don't like it. It just feels bad, or it sounds bad at the very least. But if there's one thing you wanted to take away out of this artifact section, is literally just Elemental Siphon, Dielectric, nothing else matters. Arc Elemental Orbs, pretty rubbish, don't worry about those. So as far as armor set bonuses are concerned for this build, there actually isn't anything terribly impactful. It is early days in the DLC, so I haven't had the opportunity to test many of the new ones, so I don't know whether any of them would actually fit this build well. So at the time being, I cannot give any concrete recommendations, but if there are any armor sets that you like to use, I've heard that 2-piece Tech Sec is very good with the lightsaber because it gives you that 15% increased damage versus vehicles with kinetic weapons, which is quite nice. So you could essentially go like 2-piece Tech Sec and then 2-piece Smoke Jumper, I suppose, to give yourself some extra damage resistance. Those would be my recommendations, but like I said, we need to do more testing, and I will be doing armor set testing in the future, so stay tuned to the channel for that. Okay, so now we're just going to wrap up with the armor mods. For the helmet, I have 2 super fonts to take me all the way up to 200 super with my base of 160, then a single Ashes to Assets to make it so kills with grenades grant super energy, which is going to be from our Ionic Sentry and our Arc Soul, which is nice. For the gloves, I have 2 grenade fonts to boost my grenade stat by +40, then a firepower so that my kills with Arc Soul and Ionic Sentry make orbs. Chest piece doesn't matter like usual. Then for the boots, I have stacks on stacks, a Arc Scavenger to give me more ammo for my hand cannon, then a single insulation so that every time I collect an orb, it gives a little bit of class ability energy. Finally, for the class item, we have time dilation to improve the length of our fonts, then 1 class font to get +20 class, and then finally powerful attraction. Actually, I just remembered that one of the mods from the artifact that you do want to take that is quite nice is this one in column 2. It is Gravitic Voltaic Charge, which states that while you have an Arc or Void super equipped, increases the maximum number of stacks of armor charge you can carry by 1, which is really nice. It gives you 4 armor charges. It essentially gives you charged up for free when you're using an Arc super, and that's really good because it's going to give us even more time on our fonts to, you know, improve our stats. So just remember that that's a very good mod. So that about does it for today's build. The fashion is here if you want to copy. I'm using the Phoenix Fall ornament from Phoenix Protocol on Stormtrance's brace, and the Mobalytics link to the build is going to be in the description, because if you didn't know, we are partnered with Mobalytics now, which is pretty cool. So you can go down and check that link in the description if you want a kind of nice written guide of the build, nice format to see it all. So definitely definitely go check out the Mobalytics link. But that is going to be it for today. Thank you very much for watching. If you would like to see more Renegades content, we've posted a bunch on the channel recently, such as a guide for the Lawless Frontier or DPS meta or super testing, so definitely check those out. I'm live pretty often these days. I'm going to be live for the dungeon race next week. Going to be doing lots of dungeon prep throughout the week, so if you want to catch me live, catch me at twitch.tv/llama2, and that is going to do it for today. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now, dear viewer.